me welcome him on now. He has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. He's the great Michael Shure, everyone.
My free lunch happens, with greater frequency than a presidential election. So
That's
slightly.
Indeed. So there is a major event coming up next week. I mean, for all of the other issues, it does seem as though this debate, as it's called, is the thing that might push the outcome of this election one way or the other. Is that a fair appraisal, or is the debate going to fall into the same category as everything else, which is you get what you want from it? It bolsters your candidate, your side. You're going to read the tea leaves the way you want to read them.
Yeah, I mean, my predictive analysis of these things is that, it could go wrong for one person. There aren't victories to be scored, generally speaking. There are losses to be tallied. And so to that end, it could happen. Most debates are neutral. The people who like their candidate like them, and the people who don't. And so I think that it's, but it has that potential because you have the candidates side by side. It'll be certainly interesting because you've never seen Harris and Trump opposed to each other publicly. So there is that. And look, I think that there is more to lose for the vice president in that she hasn't been seen before. So she has a bar. We already know what we're going to get for Donald Trump. Could she surprise in a good way? Absolutely. But I don't think that pushes much. And so I think getting through these debates, it's also September 10th, 2 months before the election. I know we're close to the election, but September 10th doesn't feel close to the election on election day. And so there's a lot that can happen between now and then. But yeah, I would certainly agree that it's super important in that something could happen. A lot of eyes are going to be on both of these people.
The other thing that you remind me of in sort of in an implicit way when you talk about Kamala Harris is that I'm hearing, and I mentioned this in the last hour, and I hear this a lot, she's going to mop the floor with him. She's going to, and I hear it from people who want Kamala Harris to do some floor mopping with Donald Trump. But I always caution, I don't think so. I mean, I think Trump is a television performer. I think he's very at home here.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, name a debate where someone mopped the floor with somebody, right? I mean, you go to JFK, right? And on TV, he mopped the floor because he was handsome and dashing, and Vice President Nixon at that time had sweat beads, and it didn't look good. People who listened to it actually thought Nixon won that debate. Again, that's 64 years ago. But truthfully, nobody mops the floor with people in debates, generally speaking. I can think of one debate where Hillary Clinton was running for a Senate seat against a man whose name I should remember in New York, and whoever the Republican was at that time did absolutely terribly in that debate. And Hillary Clinton won that debate, but it was also based on some sort of sexist gestures and insinuation that lost that debate. On substance, nobody wipes the floor in debates. It's unquestionable that Kamala Harris has a greater grasp of the intricacies of legislation than Donald Trump does. But that's not what these debates are about. The people whose floor gets mopped are the people who make a mistake. And you look at Gerald Ford, you look at Dan Quayle, you look at Joe Biden most recently in the debate this year that totally changed the landscape of the debate. So I agree with you, Mark. Nobody wipes the floor with people in debates. And if they do, it's on a very local level in, mayor's races and school board races.
And just to button it out, I would say also, Kamala Harris has some additional pressure for the reasons that you've mentioned. In other words, she hasn't really gotten out there in a big way in an environment like this. I think you put it like we don't know her sort of in this way. But also I'd say that expectations are high for some of the other reasons that you mentioned, which is that we know she knows stuff and Trump doesn't really know stuff. Somehow we're okay with that as a country. We discounted it, the power of it, but more to the point when it comes to the debate, her expectations for performance, I think, are fairly high.
No question. And Donald Trump has gotten away with being sexist Hillary Clinton didn't get away with being condescending to that sexist person. And so Kamala Harris has another bar, but simply by being a woman, that she has to try not to condescend to somebody who is so easily condescended, and so that she has to walk a tightrope that is very unusual, mostly because of her opponent. If she were running against Mitt Romney, it would be very different, because she wouldn't be running into that kind of an issue.
Now to some of what Trump has said. Some of what Trump has said, and a lot's made of it, we can play the clip here and again in a moment, is associated with him, in my judgment, sort of not really knowing what he's going to say and sort of BSing his way through the way he BSes his way through a lot, just kind of killing the clock till he can get to an applause line. We'll play you that in a second. But what he did say, and it reflects his newfound relationship with Elon Musk, is that he wants to hire Elon to head up auditing the entire government. It's an efficiency commission that he wants to put together. Now, this was an idea provided by Elon Musk, and it takes a guy who's already insanely powerful because of his wealth and a hold on this country through Starlink and through SpaceX. In other words, our country is having to lease technologies from him already. And it now puts him in a tremendous position of power, again, potentially were Trump to win, with control over many of the levers of government based on the fact that they're efficient or not efficient in Elon Musk's opinion. And I'm certain that many of his judgments would go on some level to being self-serving.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess so as well. That's a far-fetched thing. It assumes Elon Musk is happy to do that. B, it assumes that he's the right person to do it, and it assumes that there's going to be a Congress that's just going to allow that to happen, and that they're going to be furnishing to this third-party entity all the information that they need to furnish him in order to do the work he needs to do. I think it's a lot of bluster, and what it shows is the continued cronyism of Donald Trump and the continued effort to endear himself to powerful people who are not well liked. And I look at Musk, I look at Kim, I look at Putin. There's the people that have chips on their shoulders. He wants to be simpatico with, and that's that act is growing tired to a lot of people. So and he was speaking to the New York Economic Club, which is a club that's interested in seeing lower deficits and lower taxes, and so that's the sort of thing you would say that that you could say to that group that would make them happy.
The coalition that seemed to be unshakable, and they seem to get a lot in a kind of transactional relationship that they have with Trump, is the Evangelicals.
Right.
They've
got more than any interest group, really.
Thank you. And now, as Trump begins to waver a bit on the abortion question and on women's reproductive freedoms, he was cornered a bit on it when it came down to the Florida vote. As you know, the Florida vote essentially was going to move back in the state of Florida, essentially outlawed abortion in the state of Florida. He was going to 6-week abortion ban is what it was. He's starting to waver a bit, depending on the audience to whom he's playing. So now the evangelicals are worried. He still doesn't necessarily need to worry about losing them, right? I mean, they know that he's the only port in their storm.
Yeah. I think that, people for whom pro-life is their number one issue are not going to leave the Republican Party. They shouldn't, really. I mean, the Democrats are not going to be good curators of that. But the energy with which they will turn out for him in states where that matters is put into question because of his flip-flopping. I think there is a wink and a nod that he has with evangelicals that supersedes any of this, kind of idea of, oh, well, they're gonna hedge on him because he's flip-flopping on this issue in Florida. They have a choice, ironically, and they are. The choice for them would still be clear. It's a question of whether they come out and they're energetic about it, or they feel like they've gotten as much as they can get and they're not going to get any more from this guy.
Albert, do you have the clip and now it's achieved a lot of visibility, but boy, it really does to me speak to how Trump doesn't really understand. People are saying they didn't hear the question or whatever. He didn't understand what the question was.
No, he didn't. He was all over the place on it, and
He didn't know what child. He didn't know what child. We
didn't
covered
know
this
what
last hour. He doesn't know what child care is. He doesn't.
insane.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
as an aside, Albert shouldn't be taking breaks during my segment.
Yeah, Albert, I really don't know why he would.
Albert, thank you.
Now, Albert, play, if you would, please, this clip. Again, some are familiar with it, but okay, go ahead.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country. Because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you.
He winds himself back to the applause line. So mad respect for that, like a good performer. But this is the dance he does,
It is, and it's a dance that obviously has the people who support him in his throes. I mean, he's not going to lose those people. And Donald Trump's challenge, as we've discussed here a lot, is that he has to get people that he wasn't able to get in 2020 and still hold his coalition. I personally don't see how he can do that. I don't see him. I think there's a fatigue, and I think there's a difficulty he's going to have in winning people over for whom abortion has become an issue over the past few years. And so I do think it's going to be a struggle for him to win the election. That said, he does do the things he does well, and that he's able to. Look, he just spoke to these people, made no sense. He said they're going to cut the deficits, right? He doesn't say how. He's going to cut government waste. He doesn't say how, other than the Elon Musk thing that we talked about earlier. But, to say within a few years, those are pie in the sky promises, knowing what our national debt is and knowing what the cost of running this country is. So it's all fantasy, but people like buying into fantasy.
Yeah, and I guess for me, and this is, maybe it's not important, but we kind of went around on this in the first hour. It's about, there's sort of this, ascribing it to mental decline, and this incoherence is related to his general sense that, he can find himself lost in his own thoughts and unable. I thought it was just a guy who didn't know what the hell they were talking about, so he just defaulted to a bunch of things that he also doesn't really understand, but he's just BSing. I feel like you've known Trump through the years and decades, and you've seen him do this dance. Now, he, I'm sure, has lost a few steps mentally, and you see him now slurring a bit and doing all of this sort of stuff that you might expect from an aging guy. But I thought that one was just a word salad because he was BSing his way to an applause line.
He was. He didn't know the answer to the question. He hadn't thought about childcare really. And, I don't know what Marco Rubio and Ivanka Trump did, but if they did such great things, then there wouldn't be somebody there asking a question about what are you going to do about childcare, because it would have been resolved. So I have no clue why he brought up Rubio and Ivanka. He probably had some word association going on, but he doesn't have an answer to that question. He doesn't have to have an answer. When you're running for president, you're asked a lot of things that you don't know exactly. This just happens too much with Donald Trump, and he does do this kind of. He sort of gives a little speech and then he comes back to America first and make America great. It's like he's looking for his security blanket and then he finally finds it and he grabs it.
This Chris Lasavita, is that how he says his last name?
Lasavita, yeah.
Yeah. Lasavita is the guy who did these really swift-boated carry and found ways to essentially smear a guy who had actually gone to Vietnam and it could have gotten out of service to Vietnam.
It's a great effect, by the way.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it swung the election. It was just a remarkable thing, a thing that it was almost, it took these falsehoods and this crazy attack ad kind of strategy to high art. So now he is doing this as a senior campaign advisor to Donald Trump, and he's been beginning. If you can, he has begun.
He's begun.
He's begun. Thank you. He's begun the process of dirtying up Kamala Harris as a liberal DA. Victim's blood is on her hands, this kind of thing. They're nasty ads. I wonder if you can speak to how effective you think they'll be in the places that matter.
Presidential campaigns have nasty ads in them. I mean, this is the big time, right? And the Democrats are doing dirty things not dirty. I mean, they're framing their arguments in ways that are biting, and they're exaggerating, and they're bringing attention to things that. They're bringing big attention to things that may have been minor. I don't have a problem with it in that's what presidential elections are like now. I wish it were better, right? I mean, but it's to be expected. It's the stuff that isn't true. It's the demeaning stuff that isn't true or made up out of whole cloth. Like the Swift boat thing was really ugly. And this is ugly, but this is a presidential race going after the candidate for, their record on different things, as the Democrats are doing with Donald Trump for getting out of, serving in the military, for whatever it is. And I'm not apologizing for anything Trump's done. I just think this is the way presidential elections are. So I'm not go ahead.
You're making a distinction, though, between those things that are phonied up and those things that are just showcased and amplified in ads.
Correct. But also, I think what you do is you see, if a Republican voted on, let's say, there was a pro-tobacco thing inside of a defense spending bill as a rider, right? And a senator voted on it. Whoever was running against that senator say this guy's pro-tobacco, but it could have been on a defense cutting bill. It could have been on, who knows, but somebody attached a rider to it. So you look at these little things that people have done in their career that flirt with being true, but are not really the intent of that person, and you run with it, and that happens so much in politics because there people are on the record about so much now.
Just for the record, when it comes to spending for ads, Harris should be able to outspend Trump. I mean, to the extent that you can, wedge those spends into media buys, right?
For sure, no, and I would expect that's going to happen by the end of this, and also how people get their ads now, how they're delivered. So many of them are targeted to people who are already in the camp of the person that the ad is going against, right? So the people that are looking at Vote Vets ads, right, which are it's a sort of a Democratic-leaning veterans organization that have done some biting ads against the former president. When they do that, man, they're amazing ads, but who's watching them and who's spreading them and sharing them? Probably people who are already against Trump. So the effect that ads have, if you're watching football on Sunday and they're battling ads there, those are the ones that are, to me, most effective. Because if you're, a Democrat or a Republican, you're watching football on Sunday, you're going to see the other side and you can say, oh, really? Kamala Harris did that, or Donald Trump really did that? I mean, that's where to me, they have the greatest effect.
Sure. I get these ads sent to me that are like a minute and a half long. They come out of the Lincoln Project or whatever,
Yeah.
and a minute and a half long, that's never going to air anywhere.
No.
Even a minute probably won't air anywhere. So,
Well, it certainly won't air on TV, but a lot of people are not,
sure.
getting
And you're
that.
hoping that they'll get a virality and get shared. But I'm saying
Exactly,
90 seconds, Michael Shure, even you would go, well, you know what, I tuned out after 60,
Yeah, well, right. Well, that's like I do with this, right? What are we talking about?
Last thing I want to ask you is Stephen A. Smith, the host of First Take,
Yeah.
one of the great mouths in all of sports analysis and punditry, is getting into politics, Michael Shure. He
Talk-
is, getting into political punditry, I should be clear. He's not running for political office. Stephen A. Smith is showing up on various news programs, including News Nation's Cuomo, Fox News' Hannity, and ABC News' This Week. He is also beginning a non-sports podcast, potentially.
What?
With iHeart Podcast. Yes, he'll start with the...
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
That's right. He sometimes he talks first and asks questions later. But any thoughts? He is the highest paid, or at least one of the highest paid on-air talents in sports media today.
Yeah, I would believe that. I mean, look, if political talk, needs anything, it needs more people doing it, right? I don't, I wish him well. I don't watch him a lot. I don't mind him. I know people are really opinionated about him. I'm not. I'm opinionated about a lot of people, but he's not one. Like I'll watch him if he's on, but I'm not going to seek him out. I don't know which way he leans, or if he's just talking about it and talking about issues. But I think somebody who can get people, especially sports fans, into politics, because they're so similar, sports and politics, and somebody who could bridge that, maybe there's room for them. I don't have a huge opinion. You make America great. America first. See how I did that? I didn't really have an answer.
Very well done.
Back to my talking points. Yeah.
I love it. I love our time together, and I'm hoping for a lot of interesting insight from you. I don't want to, again, put too much pressure on you, but there is the big, quote, debate TV show coming up.
Yeah. I could maybe come on Wednesday. How about that?
That would be great. Would you come on Wednesday?
I've never been invited. Well, is Albert on break still, or is
Albert, thank you.
Albert, can Michael Shure come on Wednesday?
Yeah, of course. Yes, and I'll make sure to save my break time for my show.
Albert, thank you.
Since it'll
All right,
be,
so you've heard it.
Since it'll be me on Wednesday, can I have you on Wednesday and Friday, like a double Shure?
Oh, yeah, it'll be double Shure. But Kim is right. I will be on the road, but I will join from the road. So she thinks it'll just be her, but actually it's going to be her and me. So sorry, Kim, but I'm wrestling Michael Shure from you.
I can't shake this guy. All right.
No, I will be joining. I'm not giving up the Wednesday after that debate mess or whatever it's going to be. So,
Kim, how are you?
So we'll both query you, Michael, about your thoughts on the debate next
Look
Wednesday.
forward to being queried.
Okay. Thoughts on the Niners?
They signed the most important player on the team. That's Trent Williams, and that was good. They spent a lot of money. Thank goodness Ricky Pearsall's okay. I'm excited. I'm excited again. I hope the play calling changes a little bit, but Shanahan's generally don't change a lot, and I think that they need to a little bit. But let's see. I mean, I'm
Michael Shure, excited yet sounds a little anxious and worried. I don't know.
I'm not anxious. I just want they didn't
frustrated maybe.
Take it up. A little bit frustrated with the play calling, but again, I'll be there. I'll be pulling for them, and I'll find something to complain about.
All right. Michael Shure, everybody. Thank you. Bye, Michael. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.